What do the lyrics to the song mean? Nobody really has considered dissecting the song.
Who let the dogs out?
May something sa antahan na tumama sa akin. Someday, kapag may tamang tao ang makakuha ng tamang dapat gawin dito, ito ay magiging biggest hit in the world. Pumunta ako sa London Records with the final mastered version of Who Let the Dogs Out. Yung general manager ng label hated it.
Wala silang business plan, wala silang investors, wala silang kahit ano. Ang dala lang nila ay ang greatest record in the world na may pinamagatang Who Let the Dogs Out.
Sa pop music, kailangan mo talagang tamaan ang bullseye.
O wala kang mararating.
In my wildest dream, I never ever thought it would become the biggest song in the world.
Steve Greenberg, paano niya ba nasimulang ipagbuntis at ipanganak ang Who Let the Dogs Out?
You know, I don't look at this stuff very often. Only when if I come to the storage unit to put more stuff away, I might take a little look. It's crazy. I think if you've been in the record business for several decades, this stuff just piles up. Let me just look through here. That's Baha Men. What is this? This is the Baha Men gold plaque from Germany. This is a platinum plaque from the Now series. And that is a Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Award right there. This is the Key to the City presented to me by the Prime Minister of the Bahamas. They spelled my name wrong, but we'll forgive them that. So this is the U.S. Triple Platinum Award for the album Who Let the Dogs Out. I actually think by now it's probably quadruple platinum, but at the time we made the last plaques, it was triple platinum. It was 1998 and I was sitting in my office at Mercury Records where I was the head of A&R, and this British producer, Jonathan King, came in. Jonathan King was a kind of eccentric record executive from England, and he said, I want to play you this new act that I just signed named Fat Jack and His Pack of Pets. And it was about the worst thing I'd ever heard in my life. Who let the dogs out? It was this guy with a fake Caribbean accent, but it had a very memorable hook. I said, who wrote the song? And he said, I don't know. And he was very, very mysterious. He didn't want to give me any information. And as I'm listening to this record, it suddenly hits me. I go, well, Jonathan, this is you. You're Fat Jack, and his pack of pets. And he said, yeah, I confess, it's me. And I said, the truth is this is a great song, but I think that this isn't the right version. So I put the song up on my shelf where I kept all my demo CDs. And at the same time, in a different part of my brain, I was thinking, how do I turn that song, Who Let the Dogs Out, into a hit? Because I think it deserves to be a hit. And I went to this early search engine that existed in the late 90s that was called Ask Jeeves. So I wrote Who Let the Dogs Out. Ask Jeeves came back with this link to a message board of people who had recently been on vacation in the Caribbean. Finally, some guy came on the message board and he said, the song is called Doggy by Anselm Douglas.
Si Anselm Douglas ang original writer at performer ng Who Let the Dogs Out.
So Who Let the Dogs Out was actually inspired by my brother-in-law. He was actually a radio DJ, so he would be saying, Who let the dogs out? When he come to the house, and he was like, man, you gotta do a song like that,
Ito ay ipinareglo kay Aussie Girlie.
Body was nice, the body was pumping. He came to the studio.
Na kanyang kaibigan hanggang sa mabuo at kanyang i-perform at nakilala bilang Doggy.
So the lyric to the song is, the party was nice, the party was pumping, and everybody was having a ball. Till them man start their name calling. And the girls respond to the call. I hear a woman shout out, who let the dogs out? So I just used it from there and said, you know what? This is going to be a revenge song where women tell men, look, get away from me, you're a dog. And she went on to say, last year in the dance, you had a ball. Call me Millibug and Skettel. Get back, Fluffy, mash Fluffy. Get back, you flea-infested mongrel. Who let the dogs out? And Millibug is actually an insect that was attacking fruit trees. Now, a skettel is, it's a woman who you would not take home to mommy. Let's just leave it at that. And that slang, skettel, was everywhere. It was just degrading women and calling them all sorts of derogatory names. And like tried to do a social commentary as a party song, but the party song overshadowed the social commentary aspect of it, and we ended up with Who Let the Dogs Out. And when it was released, it was pretty much an instant hit.
No matter how big a song is in the Caribbean this year, because it's seasonal, okay, that's done.
Inindakan, hanggang sa nakalimutan at namatay.
Done, and it was done. It died a natural death, you know.
And there was a bit of frustration that, oh, it should have been better. No, we could have this and we could have that. Yeah, but I always said, listen, this song was not designed just for the Caribbean. Give it a chance, it will blow. Just leave it alone. At some point, it will blow.
And then in 2000, lo and behold, I got a call.
Mula sa idea ni Steve Greenberg, ito ay kanyang na-research at pinangatawanan. Tinawagan niya si Mike Mangini upang ayusin ang kanta. Sa paniniwala niyang may magandang kanta pero mali ang style.
I was like, how do you envision doing this? Like, how can I make this track cool? And he's like, if you did a track like Whoop, There It Is. And I was like, oh, yeah, like totally the Miami-based thing. Now it makes sense to me.
At doon na rin ang panahon na tawagan niya ang kanyang old-time friend na si Isaiah Taylor na leader ng Baha Men. Ang Baha Men ay performer sa Bahamas since 1980s. Kilala bilang High Voltage. At early 90s, pinalitan nila ang kanilang pangalan bilang Baha Men. Galing sa kanilang lugar na Bahamas. Hanggang noong 1999, sila ay tinawagan ni Steve Greenberg para sa isang record deal, and the rest was history.
And he started laughing. Man, I thought the guy was crazy. He said, no, we don't want to do that song. That song's already been a hit.
The song was big all over the Caribbean.
And I said, well, Isaiah, no, everywhere else in the world, this record is completely unknown. I'm telling you, this record could be your big hit. And he refused to do the song. He said, we're not a cover band. We don't do other people's songs.
I was just stubborn. I just couldn't see it. But by the time we finished going back and forth, I said to Steve, conversation is finished. We will do the song.
Ngunit sa gabi, bago i-record ang kanta, ay nag-quit naman ang bokalista ng Baha Men para sumama kay Lenny Kravitz.
Forget it, I'm out of here. And so we literally did not have a singer to do the song.
So he's like, I would like you to basically audition everybody who lives on the island and find the new singer for the Baha Men. And I was like, that's insane. That's crazy. It's like people coming in and they have like their chef's outfit on, or a blackjack dealer guy, or like there's just all these people who are coming from, the lunch break of their jobs to audition. One of the first people that came in was Rick Carey.
Nervous as hell.
There was this other kid who just came in named Omerit.
I wasn't nervous. I was very relaxed. I'm not thinking like, oh, I'm gonna do this audition
And then Marvin comes in out of the blue and he rapped. And I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Baha Men, I knew them from I was growing up.
I know this is gonna sound crazy to you, but I think these three kids could kind of do this. And he's like, do they all look young? I was like, yes. Do they all look cool? I said, yes. He's like, good, hire them all. So that was sort of how it came together. And it's pretty clear the record is starting to get pretty interesting and pretty fun.
And I come back down to Miami a few days later and I listen to the record and I'm really disappointed.
He comes over, he goes, you did it totally wrong. He's freaking out.
He goes, well, what's wrong? These guys are great singers. I said, you're right, they are. They're great singers, but they're terrible barkers. Woo, 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 woo. And they finally just said, okay, Mr. Smart Alec, you think you're such a good barker, why don't you do it? So I said, okay, I will. And I went into the studio and I did the bark. And that's the bark we used.
So it's the bark.
The barks in the chorus are working out great. Steve comes over and we listen and we tweak a few things. And then he becomes obsessed about how does the record start?
We worked for days figuring out the first 10 seconds of that record.
I'm trying every possible thing. I'm making new things up and putting them in there. anything I could think about. And finally I found Marvin's Who Let the Dog? I found that like singled out. Stuck it up at the front, hit play. Steve, that's it.
Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
It was game over once you heard Marvin Prosper say that one time, a cappella. It just grabbed you, and then you were in the record.
At a party when Marvin come in, oh boy. The party started. Nobody need no drugs. But guess what? We're high. This time.
At that same time, I was negotiating a label deal with London Records. And I came into the offices of London Records with this final mastered version of Who Let the Dogs Out. And the general manager of the label hated it. She thought it was the worst thing she'd ever heard. And she turned on the radio. She said, "This is Z100, the most popular top 40 station in New York. Does your record sound like it belongs on Z100? I think not." And I was like, oh. So I was at a real crossroads in my life. I had to decide, should I sign this contract with London Records and forget about the record Who Let the Dogs Out? Or should I forget about London Records and just figure out something else to do with this Who Let the Dogs Out record that I believed was the biggest hit in the world? And so I left. I walked out of London Records, never came back, and started my own label in order to put out Who Let the Dogs Out.
So technically, walang may gusto ng kanta. Kaya nagtayo si Greenberg ng sarili niyang record label. Akala ng lahat nasisiraan na siya ng ulo.
And now we have this record and he has no label and he doesn't technically have a job. Generally, people who start labels for like one offbeat record is not a great scenario.
Everybody thought that I had lost my mind. My wife thought I was crazy with this thing. Mike Mangini thought I was nuts when I brought him the song.
Steve left that big position he had at the major label to prove to the whole entire industry that what he had in his head was going to work.
Ang idea niya ay maging isang sports fight song ang Who Let the Dogs Out. Kaya ito ang kanyang ginawa.
This is my Baha Men wall here. Steve Greenberg reached out to me, and I think I was the first call that he made when the song was finished. And he said, well, he was now starting his own recording company. He was, burning through capital, and he was starting to run out of money. So Steve recognized that we needed to sort of think outside the box.
So I called Fred Traub and I said, I want you to find the guy in every baseball stadium who picks the records that they play in the stadium between innings. And I want you to work that guy like he's the program director of a radio station.
I would get their names, I'd get their information, and I would solicit them, follow up with phone calls and be a pest. It was a shot in the dark. A lot of these guys, they didn't know who I was. I'm begging them to play it. I'm doing everything that I can, but ultimately it's up to the marketplace to decide whether or not it's a hit.
The first team I believe that he got to play the record was actually the Yankees. Then the Mets started playing it, but the song really, really broke out big in Seattle. And it became A-Rod's walk-on music. So everyone just kept hearing this song. And by the time the baseball season ended, 5 out of the 8 teams in the baseball playoffs had Who Let the Dogs Out as their fight song.
All of a sudden, we started getting asked to appear at sporting events. Basketball games, tennis games, football games.
It just spread like wildfire through so many different teams.
And so Who Let the Dogs Out got played at 8 o'clock at night on Nickelodeon, like just about every night.
Everybody, grew up off of Nickelodeon, so, these awards, dreams do come true. It's corny, but it's true.
But the highlight of it all really came with the Grammys. The Baha Men, it turns out, were the first Bahamians ever to win a Grammy. And it was a big deal in the Bahamas.
When the Baha Men's version became this huge success, I wouldn't lie, there was a little bit of envy right here, like, God, that should have been me. But then there was a little bit of pride saying, that's my song.
Si Steve Greenberg ay kumita bilang producer. Ang Baha Men ay kumita ng malaki bilang performer. Ngunit si Anselm Douglas na composer ay medyo sumabit dahil maraming nag-claim na composer ng kanta na may kaparehong tunog na naipublish, na i-record mula pa nung late 80s hanggang early 90s.
Wherever you have a hit, there's going to be a lawsuit. There's going to be somebody coming out of the woodwork to take a bite, you know.
Have you heard the phrase "Who let the dogs out" before your brother-in-law?
No.
Is that okay?
But clearly somebody was saying it before, you know. Somebody said it before.
People started to come out claiming that they actually wrote the song and that perhaps maybe he had taken the hook from them. But as you went back in time, you saw that all these different people had done songs that in fact had that hook, "Who Let the Dogs Out," with a bark after it. But what's really strange is that a man named Ben Sisto actually found VHS home video of a high school football team singing that chant, "Who Let the Dogs Out," with the bark in the mid-1980s. So the fact is that this hook kind of was just in the air. It's one of those things that kids sang in a playground somewhere that moved through society and eventually got discovered by musicians and put on a record. Now, what Anselm Douglas did do, and deserves credit for, is he wrote the verses.
You know, Steve Greenberg had the vision. It was magic.
That hook was something that was magical, and when I heard it the very first time, it was obvious that if somebody could take that hook and build around that hook a great record, they could have the biggest hit in the world. And in the end, we proved it.
So, ang "Who Let the Dogs Out" ay hindi tungkol sa aso. Pero pwede ko na rin itong gawing intro sa mga dog video episodes ko.
Who let the dogs out?